Hello students, welcome to Byju's IS. Welcome to a session on economy this week, wherein we'll be taking up some of the very important articles and we'll be analyzing these particular articles. For this particular video, I've chosen the time period from 12th to 18th of October 2020, and the articles that I've chosen are from Business Time, Hindu, Business Standard, Indian Express and Livemint. Let's start the discussion. The first article is with respect to Swamitwa scheme. Swamitwa basically stands for Survey of Villages and mapping with improvised technology. Now, what is this particular scheme? But before understanding the scheme, let's look at certain very important points. Imagine there's a person X, he owns a property, this one. Now, how does he prove that he owns a property? He will have certain set of documents. Now, in case of India, understand this, these kind of a set of documents will only provide him presumptive title. These will not provide him conclusive title. Remember these two terms, very, very important. Now, what is this basic idea of a presumptive title and conclusive title? In case of a presumptive title, it simply means, imagine I am the person X, I will show a piece of paper, that is basically a bond paper, which says this survey number belongs to me. In the same way, you also might show me a piece of paper, that is a bond paper, which will say that you own this particular piece of land with the same survey number. So both of us have documents, both of us are claiming ownership of the same property. So what will happen? Both of us will go to court, file a civil case, and years this particular case will run. Majority or a substantial number of civil cases are in this particular property rights only or a property dispute only. So understand this, whatever documents we have right now, these only provide a presumptive title but not conclusive title. In case of conclusive title, basically it means if I have a piece of paper which says that I own this particular piece of land, it is guaranteed by the government. Generally, in case of conclusive titling, it is the government which provides the guarantee of ownership or a property to the owner. So that is the idea of a conclusive titling. Now, Government of India earlier had launched many schemes to provide this kind of a conclusive titling. For example, one very important scheme was in 1988, Government of India launched a Land Records Modernization Program. But later in 2008, Government of India renamed this into National Land Records Modernization Program. And as per Digital India, right now understand this, around 90% of the villages, the land records have been digitized. But again, there are so many issues with respect to mutation of the documents, whether these particular land documents can be used to borrow from the banking sector or not. Now understand this, to address this particular issue, what Government of India very recently has done is, it has launched a new scheme, Swamitwa scheme, under which survey will be done and land documents or property cards will be issued to the owners of these particular land. That is a basic idea of a Swamitwa scheme. Now, what is this importance of the scheme? Always remember this, especially in case of a developing country such as India, whether Indian economy or people in India will achieve progress or prosperity or not, usually is attached to the concept of whether the property is owned by the people or not. That is basically whether the conclusive title are available with the people or not. Prosperity is attached to this particular idea of ownership of the property. Now, in case of India, one of the issues with the attraction of FDI has been issue of land titles. Since land titles are not clear, majority of the civil cases are because of land disputes only. The foreign companies usually feel concerned with respect to investing and then starting to purchase these particular lands, but then realizing that these particular lands are under dispute. In addition to this, if I own a piece of land and the title is very clear, that is I am the owner of this particular land, I can monetize the land. I can simply use it as an asset or a collateral to borrow from the banking sector. So all these are very important points to remember with respect to idea of a clear title of the lands. Now, Government of India has identified 1 lakh villages, and in these particular 1 lakh villages across 6 states, government will be providing these particular Swamitwa property cards, and these particular owners can use these particular cards to monetize their assets. These particular 6 states which have been identified for implementation of the scheme right now are Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and Karnataka. So these are the 6 states which have been identified. This scheme will be implemented from 2020 to 2024, and during this particular 4-year time period, the objective or the target is to cover all the villages in India. This particular scheme is being overseen by Panchayati Raj Ministry. In addition to this, other departments which are involved, which you will have to remember, are National Informatics Center, National Survey of India, district authorities, Gram Panchayat offices, etc. So these are some of the very important points that you will have to remember with respect to Swamitwa scheme. Now based on this, I've given a question here. Consider the following statements regarding Swamitwa scheme. With the issuance of the land card or the card, it will make it easier for the owners to get loans. Yes. It will be implemented from 2020 to 2024. Both the statements are true. Right option is option C. Next question. Consider the following statements regarding Swamitwa scheme. The scheme is being overseen by Ministry of Panchayati Raj. Yes. Land Records Modernization has been renamed as a National Land Records Modernization Program. P is missing here. So even this particular statement is correct. So both the statements are true. Right option is option C. I've given a descriptive question also. Write a note on Swamitwa scheme and its importance in 250 words. Next article. With respect to open market operation in the context of SDLs. Now first, certain basics. Central government, state governments both issue securities in the market to raise revenues. This particular revenue is very important because generally we will see the expenditure of both, that is center and state, is higher than the receipts or income generated by both. In order to bridge this particular gap, generally these go for market borrowing. In case of central government, they issue treasury bills, they issue dated securities. Treasury bills, maturity period less than 1 year. Dated securities, maturity period more than 1 year. Whereas in case of state governments, they issue state development loans. Now, in case of SDLs, although these are issued in the market and SDLs will have a maturity period of more than 1 year, there is no secondary market with respect to these particular SDLs. And very recently, for the first time, RBI has stated that it will be conducting open market operation with respect to SDLs. Now, what is the idea of open market operation? Under open market operation, RBI either repurchases the securities which are issued by the government or sells the securities of the government. Now, in addition to this, with respect to STL, you will have to remember two very important funds. CSF, Consolidated Sinking Fund. This particular Consolidated Sinking Fund has been set up by RBI, and the funds under CSF are used by RBI to pay for the debt service. That is, when SDLs are issued, there is certain interest or coupon rate which has to be paid on this. So this particular payment shall be coming from Consolidated Sinking Fund. In addition to this, there is another fund called as a GRSF, Guarantee Redemption Fund. Now from this particular fund, the money is used by RBI to pay for the debt service in case there is a default by the state government. So these are the two very important funds that you will have to remember with respect to the concept of STLs. In addition to this, you will have to remember one more point which we already discussed in the last week. For the first time, RBI has announced that it will be conducting OMO for state development loans. RBI generally conducts open market operation, let's say repurchasing for the bonds or the securities which are issued by the central government, but for the first time it is going to do for the state government. Another very important point, the coupon rate on STLs are generally higher than the coupon rate on the dated securities which are issued by the central government. And in case of the market, the investors are generally worried about these kind of STLs for a simple reason. They feel that the state's finances are not very transparent. The risk associated with investing in these kind of bonds of the states is also higher. For a simple reason, financials of the states are under a lot of pressure. Citing all of these particular issues, generally you will see that The coupon rate on STLs is higher than the bonds which are issued by the central government. So these are some of the very important points related to OMO and STL. I've given a question here. Consider the following statements regarding STLs. The states are allowed to issue treasury bills and dated securities. Wrong. States don't issue treasury bills. They issue only dated securities, which are again long-term bonds. That is STLs. RBI uses consolidated sinking fund for debt servicing. Yes. Second statement is correct. So right option will be option B. Next article is with respect to inflation. Now please understand, inflation can be caused in the market either because of a supply side factors or because of demand side factors. Whenever inflation is caused because of supply side factors, generally we will call this as cost push inflation. And when it is caused because of a demand side factors, we will call this as a demand pull inflation. For example, imagine Government of India gives huge amount of a subsidy, transfers a cash subsidy into the hands of the consumers, reduces income tax rates, or people start earning more and more income. All of this will basically lead to what? Higher consumption demand in the market. More goods and services will be demanded. And when demand for the goods and services will start increasing like this, is it okay if I say that it will also lead to inflationary trend in the market? But this particular inflation is happening because of a demand side factors. Hence, this is called as a demand pull inflation. On the other hand, there are certain supply side factors also which will add to the cost and market prices will increase. For example, what if cost of raw material increases? What if cost of transportation increases? The wages of labor increases. GST rate increases. Because of all of these particular factors, is it okay if I say that market prices of the commodities will increase? When basket of commodities prices starts increasing like this, that is nothing but inflation. But this particular inflation is happening because of supply side factors. Hence, this is called as a cost push inflation. So this is a basic introduction. Now, what is being discussed in the article? The article discusses that despite registering a slowdown and contraction in the domestic market, inflation rate has been higher than 6%. The allowed limits or the permissible limits of inflation target is how much? 2 to 6%. But in the last couple of months, it has been hovering over 7%. And this particular inflation has been because of the food inflation. And remember this, in case of a CPI, Consumer Price Index, the food commodities or the basket of food commodities has been given a higher weightage. When they're given higher weightage and food prices in the market increases, obviously it will lead to food inflation, then leading to overall or headline inflation in the CPI. Now the article mentions that this particular food inflation has been inching upwards in the recent months despite higher agriculture production. Despite registering a higher agriculture production, the food price levels in the domestic market or in the retail market have remained higher. So you can see a very ironic situation here. That is, on one side, agriculture production registered is higher. At the same point of time, the food inflation is also higher. Then what is the reason? What has been happening in the Indian economy? This article mentions two very important reasons why, despite having higher or surplus agriculture production, there is a food inflation in the market. First one, Government of India has been procuring huge amount of food grains at MSP. Much higher than what has been mentioned even in the buffer stocks. And when Government of India procures huge amount of food grains at MSP, the supply of food grains to the domestic market or in the retail market will come down. And when the supply will come down, what do you think will happen to the prices of these particular food grains? The prices will start increasing. That is causing food inflation, which is in turn causing overall headline CPI inflation. Second very important reason which has been cited in this particular article is the distortion or the disturbances which have happened on the supply side. For example, the transportation sector has been disturbed because of the lockdown or the pandemic effect. So because of these two reasons, India is experiencing a higher retail inflation, more than 7%. So these are some of the points which are given in the article. To put in a nutshell, we can simply say that the inflation which is being experienced or retail inflation which is being experienced by the domestic market right now is because of supply side constraints and not because of a demand side constraints. So this is the gist of the article. The next article is related to concept of exports growth. Now, some of the very important basics are this. First and foremost, GDP means what? The monetary value or the market value of goods and services which are produced in India. Now, whether these particular goods which are produced in India are either consumed in India or consumed outside India doesn't matter. It will become part of India's GDP. Now, in recent times, there has been a lot of discussion with respect to exports. Post 2014, in case of India, the exports have not been very satisfactory. Okay, overall exports somewhere come around $300 billion plus. We need to promote more and more exports from India. What is the importance? Why should we focus on the promotion of exports? Because please understand, here is GDP. How can I increase GDP? The production has to increase. And when production increases, can I simply say supply of goods and services will also increase? Now, these particular goods which are supplied can be consumed either in the domestic market or can be exported. And the argument here is the international market has much higher demand compared to how much is the demand in the domestic market. Is it okay? I'll repeat the statement here. The total demand in the international market is much higher than whatever is the demand in the domestic market. So basic economic theory says what? Focus on the highest market or the biggest market. And for India, which would the biggest market be here? The export market or the foreign demand will be much higher than how much is the domestic demand. But in the recent times, Government of India's policy are more oriented towards the concept of a self-reliance rather than reviving the Indian economy through the concept of promotion of exports. The article basically says that the growth rate before 1991 in case of India was somewhere around 3.5%, which is also referred to as a Hindu rate of a growth. Remember this particular term. Hindu rate of a growth was basically coined by Professor Raj Krishna. Now, in addition to this particular number, another number which has been given is with GDP growth rate being around 3.5%, export growth rate was 4.5%. But post 1991, Indian economy has achieved an average GDP growth rate of 6%. And concurrently, right, during the same period of time, the exports from Indian market to the international market have grown by 11%. So what this article says is there is a very close correlation between the growth rate which is achieved by the Indian economy with also the export growth rate. To prove the point, again they have taken one specific time period 2003 to 2008. During this particular period of time, generally we say that the growth rate which was achieved was because of the consumption or higher consumption. But the article says that much important than consumption was the growth rate in the exports. As given in the article, the consumption growth rate during this particular period was somewhere in the range of 7%, whereas the export growth rate was somewhere in the range of around 18%. And in addition to this, the article also mentions that the capital formation, that is basically investment from the private sector during this particular period of time, grew by around 7% or 7.2% in this particular period of time. So what in gist the article basically mentions that Government of India can revive growth rate in case of Indian economy. Rather than focusing only on the domestic market, we should also focus on promoting more and more exports from the domestic market to the international market. Post 2014, because of certain exchange rate volatility, reforms such as demonetization, GST, etc., the export growth rate has been affected. And since the current situation, that is basically the current economic situation in case of India is very concerning. The household demand has come down. The incomes of the households are very lesser. The government of India's revenue or financials are very weak. In this particular situation, one way to revive the economic growth rate would be to promote the exports. In addition to this, the article also mentions that on one side, Government of India is taking very important measures which will add to more and more exports. For example, we are introducing labor reforms, we are introducing FDI reforms, etc. These kind of reforms will be attracting some of the foreign investors in India or foreign companies into India, which will not only reduce import dependence for Indian economy, they will also add to more and more exports from the domestic market to the international market. Not to forget the evolution of employment opportunities. or the job opportunities will be created, contribution to capital formation, generation of revenues for the government, etc. But on one hand, Government of India is introducing these kind of reforms which are going to attract foreign companies. But under the concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat or self-reliance, Government of India is also introducing or increasing the tariffs on imports, which does not abode well to these kind of foreign investors. Because these kind of foreign investors, whenever they want to invest in India, set up, let's say, a manufacturing facility, they would want to get access to raw material which is qualitative, which is cheaper. For example, in case of automobile sector, despite bringing in imports from China, adding customs to that, adding additional taxes to that, then transportation cost to that, these kind of imports are much cheaper to these kind of companies rather than domestically available substitutes. So these kind of private sector companies are not worried about from where they are going to get these particular raw materials as long as they are meeting their requirements. But by Government of India implementing these kind of a customs tariff, by following protectionist policies, it is basically going against its own policy of attracting foreign companies into India. And in order to revive the Indian economy, in order to promote more and more exports, Government of India needs to look into these kind of measures and start signing more and more trade agreements with foreign countries. This is the gist of the article provided here. The next article is with respect to GST. The central government has told the states that it would be borrowing on behalf of the states. Now, let me tell you the basic history here or basic background to this. The GST revenue shortfall is expected to be around 3 lakh crore rupees for the current year, and part of the 3 lakh crore rupees is to be satisfied by using or by implementing and collecting compensation cess. The remaining amount is the GST revenue shortfall here. And there is a discussion as to who has to provide for this particular GST revenue shortfall to the states. As per the agreement which has been signed between central government and the state government, for a period of 5 years up till 2022, it is the central government which has to provide the GST revenue shortfall. Now, what central government has done is, it has given the option to the states to borrow from RBI. Most of the states have agreed to this particular option, but on behalf of the states, it will be the central government which will be borrowing from RBI. So central government will be borrowing from RBI and will be transferring this particular money in tranches to the state governments. Now, why this is being done by the central government? Follow this very carefully. If states individually go to RBI and try to borrow, they might be offered a different amount of loans at different interest rates or coupon rates. Now, to ensure that every state will be able to borrow at the same rate of interest, on behalf of the states, it will be the central government which will be borrowing from RBI and then transferring to the states. This is one very important point to note here. In addition to this, central government has stated that whatever borrowing it is going to do, it is on behalf of the states, and this particular borrowing will be reflected in the balance sheet or the annual statements of the state governments, not in the financials of the central government, which has been opposed by various state governments for a simple reason. The states are saying, you promised us to pay for the GST revenue shortfall for a period of 5 years. Now you borrow from RBI, you borrow from the market, doesn't matter. Pay us in the form of a revenue shortfall. Don't ask us to put it in the form of a debt in the balance sheet. Now understand this, though central government has stated that whatever borrowing is done from RBI to pay for the states or to give to the states, this particular borrowing plus interest will be repaid by central government imposing or extending the GST cess and using this to repay this particular amount. But the concern for the states is, first and foremost, you had promised us pay us till 2022. Second, when this amount will be mentioned in the borrowings of the state governments, the borrowings of the states will increase, fiscal deficit of the states will increase. When the fiscal deficit increases, usually the risk of lending to the states in the market is expected to increase. And as such, when the states are issuing state development loans in the market, the coupon rate or interest rates is higher than the coupon rate on these particular central government bonds. So when the risk associated with lending to the states will increase, the state governments will have to pay higher interest rate or will have to offer higher interest rates in order to borrow from the market. So there are large number of issues concerned with respect to the states, why they are opposing this particular decision of the central government. In addition to this, the central government has stated, one, it will be borrowing more than 1 lakh crore rupees under this particular route. In addition to this, the borrowings of the states, that is the fiscal deficit limit of the states, has been relaxed by 0.5 percentage of gross state domestic product. And since this has been relaxed, the state governments will be able to borrow more than 1 lakh crore rupees from the market itself. So whatever was the shortfall, majority of this particular shortfall would be bridged because of these two measures which have been provided by the central government to the states. So this is the gist of the article provided here. Now, in recent times, there has been one organization which has been used, that is the Food and Agriculture Organization. This has completed 75 years, so probability of this being asked in UPSC is very, very high. What are the very important points associated with this particular Food and Agriculture Organization? First and foremost, it is a part of United Nations. It was established in 1945. The headquarters of FAO is in Rome, that is Italy. It is a specialized agency of United Nations which is basically involved in defeating hunger. It has over 194 members and it will publish one report annually which is called as the State of the World Report. So these are some of the very, very important points which could be asked in UPSC prelims. Remember all these particular points related to FAO, and has completed 75 years in 2020. Now, in addition to this, there is one term which was there in the newspaper discussion, which is referred as a diaspora bonds. This particular diaspora bonds is being discussed in the context of a Kerala government. Now, understand the context of a diaspora bonds. Kerala government or state of Kerala along with Punjab are the two very important states in terms of in remittances. That is, huge amount of remittances come to these particular two states. In case of Kerala state, in 2018 it had received $13 billion. In 2019 it received $14 billion. But this year, because of the pandemic, it is expected that the in remittances will be dropping to a very low level. So in this particular regard, KIIFB, Kerala Infrastructure Investment Fund Board, which is a statutory body under the Kerala government, to be more precise, Finance Ministry of Kerala government, has proposed to issue diaspora bonds. It has applied to RBI. Once RBI gives the approvals, it will be issuing these particular bonds. Now, what is this idea for diaspora bonds? In case of the Kerala government, huge number of non-resident Keralites reside in Middle East, especially in Gulf countries or Gulf Cooperation Council. In case of these particular countries, usually these resident investors do not earn any amount of interest on their bank amounts or bank saving accounts. Now, Kerala government wants to issue these kind of bonds to these non-resident Keralites who are living in these particular countries and attract the investments from these kind of investors. Hence, these particular bonds are referred as diaspora bonds. So, this is a basic idea for diaspora bonds which was there in the discussion in recent times. So, these are various articles as well as the questions related to these particular articles for this particular time period. Thank you. Have a good day.